Hey guys, welcome to another segment of Word of the Day. This is Caesar with Inspire Movement. Excited to be back for another segment. So today we're exploring the word expectations. So the definition for expectations is essentially a strong belief that something will happen or be the case in the future. It can also mean that, or also be defined as the belief that someone will achieve something. So that's another potential definition for it. I found an interesting quotation that I'd like to explore. Which is expectations are premeditated resentments. So what does that really dive into? Well, it dives into our expectations of people. So when we have this mistaken belief that our expectations of people should be held, and the person that we're expecting to do something doesn't live that out, typically what happens is it forms some sort of resentment, disappointment, you're morally indignant, you're shocked. So that's something for us to sort of explore a little bit further as to how we can, manage that essentially. Some everyday expectations that can lead to frustrations. You go to the restaurant, for example, you order a steak and you say that you want it medium rare. The order comes back and the waiter gives you something that's well done. Your expectations weren't met. Inherently, you're going to be frustrated, disappointed, what have you. What are you going to do with that though? Another form of, for our parents out there, of expectations that can lead to sort of resentments and disappointments. You tell your teenage kids possibly to do something before you get home, wash the dishes, let's say, or clean the kitchen. You get back home, the dishes aren't done. Again, your expectations weren't met. So there's a whole host of different expectations that we could have throughout the workday, throughout our lives, that when not met, it forms some form of disappointment, frustration, or like I said before, when it comes to people, resentment. So what can we do with that, I guess, is the bigger question. Well, for let's say marital relationships or relationships between significant others, we can have a whole host of expectations that basically form as a baggage that we have over someone. How can we contend with that? Well, one thing to do is basically talk things out openly with your significant other. Instead of kind of like by divine intervention, expect that person is going to know exactly what it is that you want and when you want it. Why not just talk things out, openly about what your expectations are of them within certain situations, so that possibly when that situation arises, you don't have some sort of unmet expectation that leads to resentment or some sort of discord between the two of you. So that's something very practical that we can all do. And that doesn't necessarily only apply, I think, to like marital situation or maybe a significant other. Even in the workplace, like we could have an expectation of somebody that's a subordinate of ourselves, or maybe even above us, somebody that we report to. Having clear and open communication can really, really wash away a lot of those unmet expectations that lead to resentment or disappointment. Another thing to sort of consider as we expound on the word expectations is just a simple act of letting go. And I know that sounds easy, but letting go, just letting go. Okay, you've arrived at a situation where you had an expectation that wasn't met by someone. You can hold on to it and be grudgeful and be resentful, but that's really not going to solve anything. The harder thing to do is to ultimately let that go. And once you do, then you can find a place of serenity and peace, which is ultimately where you want to be at every day, if at all possible. So just a simple act of letting go. And again, when it comes to people, not only letting go, but once that situation arises, the first thing to do is accept reality, right? Don't live like in this, a magical world where people are going to do what you want them to do because you thought it out. Accept the outcome. And maybe it's not the outcome that you wanted, but ultimately it's one that you have to accept, you have to contend with, and you have to do something about. And then ultimately, let that person be. Just let them be. We're all very different. We all think very different. And sometimes we're going to be in perfect synchronicity, but sometimes we're not. So in terms of my own reflections on this word, I think for me personally, a lot of my fiscal year 2020, beyond all of the things going on globally that we've talked about before, I think one of the bigger lessons for me to take away from 2020 was my expectations of people when they're particularly expectations that I feel that are not being met, and what to do with that. I had friends and acquaintances in certain situations, whether it be with work or maybe even familial settings, where I had expectations of others that weren't met, and ultimately I was, really bordering on being resentful and being kind of a little spiteful possibly. And I had to really work on letting that go, because ultimately the only one that's harming himself the most through that process is me. So that's something for us to consider as we sort of explore this word, or maybe expound on this word, is that if we can't let go of these expectations that we have of other people, and just sort of accept the fact that sometimes we're going to be in synchronicity, sometimes we're not. Ultimately, we're going to end relationships. We're going to create wedges in relationships that were possibly close once before, and now all of a sudden they're not, because you haven't even approached that person to talk to them about what happened. So to me, that was a very, very big lesson, which I'm still actively working on, and it's not something that I feel like I've resolved in my life. Maybe it's a work in progress, but such is life. We're all a work in progress, I feel, in certain respects. So I'm definitely no different. So again, I hope that you enjoyed these reflections. It's something that I certainly enjoy doing. One thing that I did want to add on this particular segment, which we're not so much exploring, but we're going to do throughout the course of this year. If you're enjoying these reflections that we're doing, I want to now sort of open up a podcast in which we'll be able to maybe talk a little bit more at length about some of the things that we're talking about, and maybe even have other folks chime in on some of these words that we're choosing on a weekly basis, or subjects that we're sort of choosing on a weekly basis, that are possibly more experienced, or can give a little bit better delivery than I can. So I'm really looking forward to doing that. Please tune in, among so many other things that we're about to throw your way. If you haven't tuned into our YouTube channel, we just recently released one of, I think, like 5 that are in the works, in the editing process right now. Interviews, full-fledged interviews that are almost 35, 40 minutes long. Please tune into our YouTube channel again, and look for more recent relatable content on our Instagram. And we'll eventually be also uploading a lot of this material onto our Facebook page as well. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I look forward to seeing you guys next week, and have an awesome, awesome rest of the week. Blessings.